Okay, we are 23A. Yeah, 23A. So we just discussed that Rabbi Pedas was of the opinion that Rabbi Eliezer was the author of our Mishnah who did not allow buying an animal from the idol worshippers, and the rabbis allowed it. In the middle, we learned this teaching from Shila that really the reason for Rabbi Eliezer is that really he learns the pasuk in the Torah, "Vayikhu to mean you can't buy the red heifer from the idol worshiper. Rather, you have to buy it only from a Jew." So I think that's what we're up to, 5 lines from the bottom of the page. So says the Gemara, "Lo sagadaita katani seifa v'cheni Rabbi Eliezer posel b'chol hakarbanos kulan." The end of the brisa says that Rabbi Eliezer nullified all the sacrifices, meaning he didn't allow any sacrifice that was bought from a idol worshiper, not just a red heifer. So you see, Rabbi Eliezer is not limited to a red heifer. He agrees that by all sacrifices. Now, the Shila, if you want to tell me that Rabbi Eliezer is like Shila, who only prohibits a purchase of an idol worshiper when it's regarding a red heifer, if Rabbi Eliezer was limited to that, so then Bishma para kicha, by the para aduma, the word kicha to purchase is mentioned, and therefore Shila understands it that you can only purchase it from a Jew and not from a non-Jew. Ela kulhu karbanos kicha ksivahu. It doesn't say the word kicha by the rest of the sacrifices. So by the rest of the sacrifices, there should be no limitation of buying it from a non-Jew, and yet we see that Rabbi Eliezer said in the brisa that all sacrifices cannot be bought from the non-Jews, not just a red heifer. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to go for a while now back and forth about exactly what the dispute the rabbis and Rabbi Eliezer is, what that dispute is. Rabbi Eliezer prohibits buying it from an idol worshiper. The rabbis do allow it. What exactly? Where is their dispute and what is it about? So let's see. The Dilma ad Kano Pligi Rabban Aleha, the Rabbi Eliezer, turning the page. Maybe the rabbis only argue on Rabbi Eliezer. Ella bipara, by a red heifer, the Meha Yikarin, it's super expensive. There, Rabbi Eliezer holds that the idol worshiper will give in to his desires and maybe have relations with it. And the Chachamim say, no, we're not worried about that. Maybe that's where their dispute is. Would he nullify the animal? Would he lose out on the money for a little to give into his Yetzer Hara? Yes or no? Aval bishar korbanos, the rest of the sacrifices, module. By the rest of the sacrifices, maybe they'll agree to Rabbi Eliezer that you're not able to purchase it. Okay, so maybe that's a dispute. It's a local dispute by a red heifer, but globally, by the rest of the sacrifices, everyone's going to agree that you cannot purchase them from the idol worshippers, as our Mishnah seems to say. Well, if that's true, what's going to be? We had a brisa earlier that says you can buy the animal to use as a sacrifice from the idol worshippers. You remember we differentiated according to one opinion between buying versus secluding, but it says that you can buy the animal. So according to this explanation, who is that going like? Money lo Rebbe Eliezer v'lo Rabbanon. It's not Rebbe Eliezer, it's not the Rabbanon, because according to this, we're suggesting that they would agree by all other sacrifices that it's prohibited. Rebbe Eliezer's colleagues, the ones that argued on him, they asked a question on him from a verse in Yeshaya. It says, Kol tzon kedar yikaptu lecha yalu al mizbechi. The verse in Yeshaya talks about the flock of the Yishmaelim and buying from them and bringing it up as a sacrifice. So they asked him, what do you do with that verse? It says in the verse that sounds like you can buy the animal from the non-Jew and bring it up. So from other sacrifices are permitted. Good morning. Are permitted. So but you see that they asked from another area. They didn't ask from a red heifer. That obviously their dispute is not limited to red heifer. Rather, it's much more global. It's really a dispute by all sacrifices. Can you or can you not buy from the idol worshiper. Here, we're here, 23b. I have a period. Okay, so now we're going to go for a while now about the red heifer. So if you find one, you'll know what to do now. So we said by red heifer, we have this disputes only. We're worried. Maybe it was sodomized. But if it was for sure sodomized, everyone agrees it's going to be invalid. Now, shmamina depara kachem mizbeachi. Now we know that there are basically two kinds of sanctity when it comes to animals and the temple. There's what we call the kachem mizbeach or kachem kadashim, things that are more holy, the ones that are brought up onto the altar, and those have their own rules and regulations, much more strict. And then there's kachem bedek abayis, things that you donate for the upkeep of the temple, that is much more lenient. So the fact that you're invalidating the red heifer, if it was sodomized, shmamina, it must be you're considering the red heifer to be kachem mizbeachi. The kachem bedek abayis, if it only had a lower level of sanctity, and the way an animal would be if it was just donated to the upkeep of the temple, mi mivsla baravia, we don't disqualify things that are donated for the upkeep of the temple because it was sodomized. We don't disqualify for that. So says the Gemara, okay, so, and yet a red heifer is disqualified. So says the Gemara, a concept which is used by red heifer in other places, shiny para, even though a red heifer, it has, on the one hand, it has a status of kachem bedek abayis. It's a lower level sanctity. On the other hand, the Torah calls it chatas kaya rachmana. It calls it a chatas. So on the one hand, it's a lower level of sanctity. On the other hand, it's going to have dimensions of a higher level of sanctity. Invalid thoughts, different things. So our case also. So it's called the chatas. So it takes on some of the characteristics of a sin offering, which is something which is a higher level of holiness. It takes that on, and therefore for sodomization also, even though it's a lower level of sanctity, but it's going to have an invalidation of sodomization. So says the Gemara, if that's true, chatas kari rachmana, it's going to have the status of a higher level of sanctity. So a C-sectioned animal is going to be invalid. We should invalidate a red heifer if it's C-sectioned, if it's taken out, not from a natural birth, from the uterus, but if it's from the stomach, maybe you'll say, yeah, that's right, it is invalid. Well, why does it say in the Mishnah, that if you sanctify the animal when it was yotzei dofen, when it was the C-section animal, so then that's going to be invalid. But Rabbi Shimon is makshir. Rabbi Shimon allows it. So Rabbi Shimon allows it. How could he allow it? We usually invalidate the yotzei dofen, the C-sectioned animals, and yet he allows it. So it's not chatas kar. It's not that it has the dimensions of a chatas. You see, it doesn't, because it's still good even though it's C-sectioned. Maybe you'll say really it is invalid, and Rabbi Shimon is unique. Why? Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Shimon goes according to his reasoning, because he holds that a yotzei dofen, the C-sectioned animal, is a vlad ma'al is considered to be a good fetus. It's a good animal. The problem is Rabbi Yochanan says that according to Rabbi Shimon, when it comes to the holy animals that are brought up on the altar, even he agrees that it's going to be invalid. He just agrees by a red heifer, but by other animals, he holds that would invalidate them. So what are you going to say now? The red heifer is somewhere in the middle. It's a lower level of sanctity. We're suggesting it's called the chatas, and it's going to have a problem of sodomization. It's going to be invalid. On the other hand, it's valid if it's C-sectioned. So, Ella, what do you have to say? Shiny para, hoel umum poselba, davar erva Avodah Zora nami poselba. So, even though it is true, the para is called the chatas, and that will remain for other halachas. But since we ran into a problem here of this C-section, we're going to give another answer. What's another answer? That we're going to see that the Torah is going to compare two kinds of invalidations. We're going to compare a mum, which is a blemish, one, it has a fatal injury, is going to be compared to if it's invalid regarding that it had illicit relations like sodomization, or it was used for idol worship. Since the Torah compares those two, since the paraduma is invalid with a blemish, it's going to have invalidation regarding sodomization as well. So let's see it inside. Elashayni para ho'elu mum poselba. Since a mum, a blemish, invalidates it, davar erva, something which is literally erva is illicit relations. In this case, it means if it was used improperly, meaning it had relations, it was sodomized, or Avodah Zora nami poselba, or it was used for idol worship. That's going to invalidate it also. How do I know? Dichsiv, it says, when it talks about the invalidations of the animals, it says, ki mashchasam bahem mum bum. So it has the words mashchasam. Hashchasa is destruction. We're going to bring in two places that the word destruction specifically refers to illicit relations and idol worship. And the next word is mum bum. It's going to be in a blemish. So we're going to compare regular blemish to these kinds of blemishes. And we're going to say, since a paraduma has one kind of blemish, it's going to have the other kind of blemish as well. How do we know that the word mashchasam, which means destruction, that refers to specifically illicit relations and idol worship? V'tana de Rabbi Shmuel kol makom shenemar. We had this in Sanhedrin, yeah. Kol makom shenemar. Kol makom shenemar. Yeah. Kol makom shenemar hashchasa eino el davar erev avodah zara. Every place, any place that says the word hashchasa, by I think by Parshas Noah, Shem saw the world was hashchasa. It was in a state of destruction. What they're referring to? Davar erva v'avodah zara, illicit relations and idol worship. How do I know? Davar erva dichsiv. Oh yeah, Parshas Noah. Ki hishches kol basar es dargo. Every flesh destructed their ways. They were a destructive way. So that's referring to illicit relations. Avodah zara dichsiv paint tashchisun v'atisel pesel. That rather, lest you destruct your ways and you make an idol. Oh, so now a para aduma, a red heifer, a para nami, hoil umum poselba. Since a paraduma does have, it cannot have certain blemishes. It has similar to other sacrifices. Since it has that qualification that it has to be free of blemishes, it also has to be free of sodomization. So since it has that disqualification, has that stipulation that it has to be free of those blemishes, a regular blemish, like a fatal injury or whatever, so too it has to be free of anything regarding sodomization or idol worship. And that's how you know that a red heifer will be disqualified if it was sodomized. And the only dispute between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim is, are we worried that that he gave into the idol worshiper gave into his evil inclination, knowing he's going to lose money, a lot of money, or not? So, but if we know for sure that he did it, then it's for sure disqualified. Gufa. So now we're going to go back to some of the different para aduma laws that we saw and analyze them. Gufa. Tani Shila. Shila taught us that you're not allowed to buy an animal, a red heifer, from an idol worshiper, because the Torah said Vayikhu b'nei Yisrael, and he interpreted Vayikhu as Vayikachu. You cannot buy from them. Now, what's going to happen if you find that word Vayikhu in another context? So maybe you'll say, then you can't purchase that item also from an idol worshiper, and let's see if that's going to play out. So, my Tani Shila, my time, Rabbi Eliezer dichsiv davar b'nei Yisrael vayikhu b'nei Yisrael yikachu ve'eno v'tkachavim yikachu. You can only buy from a Jew. You cannot buy from an idol worshiper. Elameat, if that's true, it says by truma, right? Opening pasuk of Parshas Truma. It says davar b'nei Yisrael vayikhu li truma. So you should buy from me truma. I mean, literally, really means you should take from me truma. Right, that's what all the commentaries ask. It doesn't mean take from me; it means to give to me. It should say nasnuli truma. What do you mean take from me truma? But the context is, so the word that's used is vayikuli truma. So we're saying now maybe hakanami de bnei Yisrael vayikhu ve'enov v'tkachavim yikachu. Maybe you can only get truma, buy truma from a Jew. You cannot buy truma from a idol worshiper. So says the Gemara, okay, maybe yeah, you're right. Who says you're wrong? Yeah, you're right. The Halmar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. This is very funny. I didn't realize this is coming up, but I mentioned this story about Kibbutz Avim yesterday at the very end, and then it comes up. I didn't realize it's going to come up now. So yeah, it made me laugh. Okay, so Shalosh Rabbi Eliezer. So the Gemara in Kiddushin, right in the middle of 3 or 4 daf of honoring your parents, all the laws about honoring your parents. In the middle says, you want to know how far it goes. Shalosh Rabbi Eliezer ad heichan kibud aveim. How great is kibud aveim? And they bring an example from an idol worshiper. So that's also a question. Are they commanded in honoring your parents? That's not one of the 7 that's been in Noach. So what's the proof? Okay, that's for Kiddushin. But either way, Shalosh Eliezer ad heichan kibud aveim. How far does it go, kibud aveim? Amar lahem, I'll tell you how far it goes. Look what happened over here. Yeah, look what this idol worshiper did to his father, Ba'ashkelon. And what was his name? It was to his father in Ashkelon. And his name was Dama ben Nesina. Shmo. So what did he do? Pam achas big shmimenu. His father was a big jeweler, and these avanim la'ephod, they wanted certain stones for the ephod, for the Kohen Gadol's breastplate. So what did they do? B'shishim ribui schar. Sounds like he was selling them 600,000 rubles, yen, dollars. Yeah, no, it cost a lot of money. So and he and his father had it. So Rav Kahana Masti the Shimonim ribui, maybe it cost 80,000. So now what happened? They knocked on his door. They said, Reb Dama. Yeah, so he said, yeah. I said, we're here to buy this precious gem. We need it. So and we know you have it. So he said, okay. The problem is how you maftekos munakos takas merashosaf shalaviv. My father's taking his afternoon nap right now, and the keys to the chest where these jewels are under his pillow. Right? He kept them in a safe place. And what did he do? Did he wake up his father? No, he didn't. Even at the expense of so much money, velo tziru, and he did not wake up his father. So now, so you see, okay, parenthetically, you see, wow, how great is Kibbutz Avim? Look what he did. Fine, but for our purpose, what do you see? They were buying things that are going to be used in the temple. The Avnei Shoham are going to be used in the temple, and who are they buying it from? They're buying it from an idol worshiper. So you see, you could buy things from an idol worshiper. So just because it says by Truma, there in Parshas Truma, it says Vayikuli Truma. You should, make a correction. It doesn't mean Truma like we think the food that the Kohen could eat. Vayikuli Truma there means give me a donation. And then it goes off to list all the materials that we have to donate to the temple. It goes through all the different gold and jewels that they gave to the temple. So it says Vayikuli Truma. Bring for me a donation to the temple. We're going to build the Mishkan. That's the parsha of building the Mishkan. So donate to me all the donations. The Gemara says maybe you can only buy things for the temple from a Jew and not from an idol worshiper, because it says Vayikru. And yet we see in this story, who did they go to buy the Avnei, to buy the stones for the Kohen Gadol's breastplate? They went to Dama ben Nesina. They went to the idol worshiper. They didn't go to a Jew. So what do you see? Even though it says Vayikru, you still are allowed to purchase these things from idol worshippers, and there's no concern. So that seems to be a problem, because Sheila said when it says Vayikru, at least by a red heifer, there's a stipulation. You can only buy it from a Jew, not from an idol worshiper. So what's the difference between the stones that you're going to be donating to the temple to use as the material versus a red heifer? They both say Vayikru. So right now the Gemara says Avnei Shoam Hifsik Ha'inyan. So as the Torah is listing the different materials there, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and has a vav, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and then it gets to the Avnei Shoam, the Shoham stones, and it doesn't have a vav, just as Avnei Shoham. So it says the Gemara Avnei Shoam Hifsik Ha'inyan. It sounds like it's like separate. It says and this, and this, and this, and this, and then it stops and it goes Shoham stones. Where's the and? It sounds like it has a different rule than the other stones. It says there v'chesef and silver and achoshes and copper v'techeles v'argamon v'ora, and it doesn't say that by Shoham. So it sounds like it's separate, and therefore the other materials do have to be purchased from a Jew, according to Sheila. Avnei Shoham has no vav, and therefore it's different, and that can be purchased even from an idol worshiper. I says the Gemara. It says though the next word avnei miluim, but the miluim stones, the stones are going to be I think the avnei shomra on the shoulders of the breastplate, and the avnei miluim were the ones that are actually on the chest. So the avnei miluim, it says ve'avnei miluim. So the Gemara understands that since it says ve'avnei miluim, ksiv the hadar arve, it really puts it back together. So you have to know why the avnei shom was missing a vav. Good question for Parshas Truma. But ve'avnei miluim, it really puts it back in with the chevra. It got put back in. So therefore, it really would have the same characteristics as the original materials, and yet you see that they bought it from Dama ben Nesina. Now, here's a story that I mentioned yesterday. Was the end of that story was the Od Katani Seifa? What happened the next year? Sounds like Hashem really rewarded him. Noldalo para aduma. It was born to him a para aduma. Be'edro is in his flock. And what happened? So obviously, Jews got excited. So all the rabbis came to him. Amar lahem. So now, this seems like a very upstanding non-Jew. So he says, basically, he knows that he has the upper hand because they'll do whatever it takes to get a para aduma. So he could charge them up to whatever he wants. Amar lahem. So he told them this. Yodani, I know, Bachem. If I request you all the money in the world, you'll give it to me for the paraduma. So maybe he should do that. It's a good businessman, no? So akshav an enim bevakesh mikem ella oso maman sheifsadati b'shvil abba. I'm only requesting that money that I gave up for not waking up my father. I want that money back. That's how much I'll charge you for the paraduma. So what do you see? Who are they buying a red heifer from? They're now going to buy a red heifer from an idol worshiper. So this for sure flies in the face of what Sheila said. So now Sheila's in real trouble. He says, Vayichu said you cannot buy the paraduma from an idol worshiper, only from a Jew. What are you going to do over here? They bought it from an idol worshiper. So without knowing that this Gemara quotes the story, so I thought either it's a proof that we don't go like Sheila, but the Gemara here is trying to defend Sheila. Ella Hasam Ayadei Tagre Yisrael Zavan. It's an interesting answer. It sounds like a Jewish merchant bought this cow from Dama ben Nesina, and then they bought it from the Jewish merchant. So at the end of the day, when they're buying the animal to use for a red heifer, they're not buying it from the idol worshiper. They're buying it from the Jewish merchant. Yeah. And that's going to be okay. Yeah. So that's fine. So now, okay. Says the Gemara of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer was the one who did not allow you to buy the animals from the idol worshippers. So Rabbi Eliezer lo chayish l'revia. We're asking. Sheila was the one who said you cannot buy from the idol worshiper because the Torah says you can't do it. So, and we said that would go like the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. So now we're asking, really, according to Rabbi Eliezer, your only concern is purchasing from the idol worshiper because the Torah says so, but not because you're worried for sodomization? Is that really true? The Hatanya Amru Lo Rabbi Eliezer, that they asked a brisa to Rabbi Eliezer. That would happen. Maisa v'lakhu min Oved Kochavim v'dama shmo v'amri la remet shmo, and they asked a question on 1 second. Yeah. So we're asking, according to Rabbi Eliezer, you're not worried about sodomization, but the brisa said that they asked Rabbi Eliezer about the story that you bought from the idol worshiper, the Dama Shmo, or some say Remet Shmo, and Rabbi Eliezer responded to them, Amar Lehen Rabbi Eliezer, Misham Raya, Yisroel Hayu Mishamrim Osa, Misha Shenolda. So Rabbi Eliezer found this story very difficult, that they bought an animal, the red heifer, from an idol worshiper. So he found that it was a question against him. He says, you cannot buy from the idol worshiper. And yet, how did he respond? He responded, no, they guarded the animal from the time it was born. And therefore they guarded it. The Jews somehow, it's like a Mordechai with Esther. The Jews kept checking on the animal to make sure it wasn't sodomized. So what do you see? Rabbi Eliezer himself, the way he defended his own self was by saying that the Jews guarded this animal. So what do you see? He is worried for sodomization. So says the Gemara, you're right. According to Sheila, Rabbi Eliezer tartius, like he really has two reasons why you cannot purchase an idol worshiper. First of all, kicha. It says kicha, the word kicha, and according to Sheila, that means you cannot buy from an idol worshiper, only from a Jew. V'chayishnami l'revia, and you should also be concerned for sodomization. Now, on this idea that the Jews watched the animal from when it was born, we're going to have some discussions. Amar Mar, Yisrael hayu mishamron osa mishasha nolda. The Jews were watching the animal from the time that it was born. Rabbi Eliezer, so how's it going to help you? What do you want to do? You want to solve the problem of sodomization. So what do? You're there from the time the red heifer is born, and you're watching it the whole time. And you think you've solved the problem. The problem is, v'nechash dilma rave le'ima ki have ma'abra. What if the mother of the red heifer, it was sodomized while it was pregnant? Now, who says that the mother being sodomized is going to affect the child? Maybe the mother was sodomized. Okay, that's its problem. But the fetus that comes out is not affected by that. To that we say, Damarava Vlad Hanoigachas Aser. If you have an animal that gores, its fetus is going to be prohibited. So you see that the fetus takes on the prohibitions and the disqualifications of the mother. So too here, Vlad Hanoigachas Aser. Aser, Damarava Vlad Hanoigachas Aser. He vivlada nakhu. It's like it and the child gored. Vlad hanir bas aser. He v'vlad hanir. Also, a fetus of a animal that was hanir bas, that was sodomized. It and its fetus are going to be, they're sodomized, and therefore they're going to be prohibited. So what do you see? What did you solve? You watched the animal from when it was born, but we're worried about the idol worshiper having relations with the animal when the animal is pregnant. So how are you going to watch from there? Says the Gemara, Ema Yisrael Mishamrosa Mishash Notzra. And now we're going to ask on this. Maybe they watched the animal from the time it was the time of the inception. Now, how do they know when that was? We're going to see. But we're suggesting now that they had to watch the animal even before the mother cow got pregnant, before the mother of the red heifer got pregnant. So now, says the Gemara, I v'nechesh dilma ravu le'ima meikara. Maybe the animal, the mother was sodomized. I think even before the inception. Even before the inception, it was sodomized. Ditnan kol apsul mizbeach v'rosein mutarin. It says that all the disqualified animals, its fetuses are going to be mutter. And on that statement, we say, V'tani la Rabbi Eliezer oser. Rabbi Eliezer prohibits them. So if you have a disqualified animal, so let's say in this case, the red heifer's mother, so before it was pregnant, it was sodomized. Then it got pregnant, and then it gave birth. According to Rabbi Eliezer, it's still going to be prohibited. So why aren't you worried for the mother being sodomized even before it had inception, even before it was pregnant with the red heifer? So now, Hanicha l'Rava, we're going to have two opinions, Lefi Rabbi Eliezer. Hanicha l'Rava d'Amarava, Amarav Nachlan, Machlokas b'shenirbu, kishehein mukdashin, aval kishein chulin, divrei hakol mutarin. According to Rava's understanding, in the name of Rav Nachman, the dispute about the fetus being permissible or disqualified if its mother was invalid was only if the mother animal was already holy, then it was sodomized, then it got pregnant and gave birth. Aval kishehein chulin divrei hakol mutarin. But if it was never holy yet and it got sodomized, according to this opinion, everyone agrees that is going to be permitted. So therefore, the red heifer's mother was not holy, and therefore, even if it was sodomized before it got pregnant, if it got pregnant and gave birth to a red heifer, which is holy, that is still going to be permitted. That's only good according to Rava's understanding of the dispute. Ela Rav Huna bar Chanina Rav Nachman, but Rav Huna said, son of Chanina, in the name of Rav Nachman, there's a dispute. What Rav Nachman held, Machlokas kishenirbu kishehein chulin. There's a dispute that even when it's sodomized, when it's not holy, that's where the dispute is. So you have a regular animal sodomized. Next thing you know, it gets pregnant, gives birth, and that the child is going to be holy. But still, since it came from an animal that was sodomized, that's going to be a dispute. Rabbi Eliezer is going to prohibit it, and the Chachamim are going to allow it. Aval kishen mukdashin, if it was holy, then divrei hakol asur, and then everyone's going to agree it's going to be prohibited. But according to this opinion, if you have an animal which is mundane, that gets disqualified, and then has a child, that child will still be disqualified according to Rabbi Eliezer. So once again, according to this understanding, why are we not worried that the mother of the red heifer at one point was sodomized, then it got pregnant and gave birth to the red heifer, which is now going to be kadosh, which is going to be holy. So you should be worried for that. So what's Rabbi Eliezer going to say? So Michael Meimar. So you have to say is Ema Yisrael Hayu Mishamranosa Le'ima Misha Shenotzra. It sounds like they guarded the mother from the time that the mother was conceived. So, yeah, it sounds like the mother of the red heifer was guarded from the very beginning. So that's you have to say. V'neichash Dilma. Okay, but now we're going to say maybe the mother's mother was sodomized. V'neichash Dilma Ravula Ima de Ima. No, that's already too far. That's already too far. We're not worried about the grandmother of the red heifer. The mother of the red heifer, we are worried about. But the grandmother, we're not worried about. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So according to Sheila, according to Rabbi Eliezer, what you have to say is the fact that the rabbis all bought it from Dama ben Nesina. What you have to say is because they must have guarded the mother carefully, and therefore they ensured that it was a kosher paraduma. Amar Mar Yisrael Hayu Mishamran Osa Misha Shenotzra. So we said that they guarded the paraduma from when it was conceived. The question is, Minaya Dinan, how do you know when the time the animal conceived is? So, Amar of Kahana, Kos Adam Ma'avir Lefaneha, Bisha'a Sha'ola Allah Zakar. Sounds like there's a system in play. You have a cup, a red cup. Some kind of, I'm not sure what's the red stuff? I don't know exactly. But it has food coloring, I'm not sure exactly. Something red in the cup that you pass in front of the animal when it's mating, or it's about to mate with the other animal, and then that's going to produce a paraduma. So, ihachi, one sec. Is that easy? You just take a red cup and put it in front of an animal, and you got a paraduma. So, amai demel yikarin. So why is it so expensive? Everyone should do this. Everyone go to your nearest area with the paraduma with the cow and put the red stuff in front of it while it's mating, and it's going to have a red heifer. Says the Gemara, no, but other signs also. For instance, hol v'shtei sa'aros postlospa. Since the two hairs, if it has any two hairs, either two black hairs or two white hairs on it at all, that's going to disqualify it. So therefore, it's going to be, that's why it's very hard to find such an animal. So, Umay Shna did who? What's the difference in this animal that everyone went to buy it from the idol worshiper? So they went here. How they know about this animal over here by Dan Ben Esina? That's because Amar Rav Kana b'muchzekes. sounds like this cow was from an animal, from a family. Dam ben Nesina had a whole farm of these cows, and they knew that they give birth to red cows, to red heifers. So since there was a good chance that this was going to happen, that's why they went to Dam ben Nesina, because it sounds like his crop was producing red cows, red heifers. Okay. Okay, let's see. Yosef, Rabbi Ami, Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, Akila de Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. So Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Yitzchak were sitting on the porch of Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. So what did they say? One said to the other, Pasach Chad Minayu, the Amar Bechein Hayer Eliezer Posel B'Cholak Rabbanos Kulon. Rabbi Eliezer disqualified all animals if they're bought from an idol worshiper. So Pasach Idach Minayu Amar. Well, if that's true, Mai Osibu Lech Haburai Rabbi Eliezer. So one of them said that according to Rabbi Eliezer, he disqualified all sacrifices. Now the verse says his friends asked him, his colleagues asked him. The verse says in Yeshaya that it says Kol Tzon Keder Yikaptzulach V'Gomer. It sounds like that you're going to buy animals from the Yishmaelim. You're going to buy the animals and bring them up onto the Mizbeach. So how can you do that? You can't buy from a non-Jew. So Rabbi Eliezer seems to understand this verse as referring to something totally different. Amar Len Rabbi Eliezer. It's really the verse is saying Kulam Geirim Gerurim Hem La'asilavo. Really, the verse is talking about a lot of when Mashiach comes, a lot of converts are going to want to convert due to the honor that they see accrue to the Jews. Now, and that's seemingly the way he understands the verse. I'm not sure exactly how he fits it in to the animals being bought, but he understands the verse as referring to that it's referring to converts coming on their own, even though we're not. Now we're not going to accept all of them then because they're really coming because they want the honor, like the Jews getting honor. It's not real converts, but either way, that's how he understands the verse. Amar of Yosef, Ma'ikra, what does the verse say? It says in Sefanya, Ki az epoch el amim safa berura. Everyone's going to speak one language. Likro kula b'shem Hashem la'avdo. They're all going to speak one language, meaning they're all going to call out to Hashem. They're all going to recognize Hashem as one. And so Amri Leah Abaye Vidilma Ma'avodas Kochavim Hu Dehadar Behu. Maybe it just means. One second. What? Right. So maybe it's not that they're all gonna really follow the right thing and do their laws and be upstanding non-Jews. Maybe what it just means is they're gonna stop doing idol worship, but they're still gonna be involved in sodomization. So Amr Le Rav Yosef la'avdo shchem echad ksiv. So it says shchem echad. It sounds like they're all going to worship Hashem equally, meaning they're all going to serve Him. Everyone's going to do the right thing. So it sounds like that verse that talks about buying from the non-Jew, it seems like according to Rabbi Eliezer, really it's referring to the time in the future when even the non-Jews are going to stop doing things that are prohibited, such as sodomization. Really, they're all going to serve Hashem in the very proper way. And therefore, in that case, you're not worried anymore that you're going to, you can buy the animal from the idol worshiper. You can buy it from him because you're not worried for sodomization anymore. They're going to have clarity and they're going to keep at least keep their 7 mitzvos b'nei Noach.